Guys, and welcome back to Timeless RC. Today we're going to be doing part 3 of the CR01 build. As you can recall from last time, we managed to get the servo installed onto the front axle with all the bars and that, so that's all now ready to be attached to the chassis. But today we're going to finish off just doing the back axle, the rear axle, so that we can then enable us to put them onto the chassis today. So we'll be in a position hopefully to get it finished ready, so that it's just a case of the body shell and painting to be done. So first of all, we need to take one of the longer bolts and put it through the bumper bit into the axle. Let's get the bolt into the spanner ready. It makes it much easier to pick up. And then if we place the spanner on the bottom of the bolt, it makes it so much easier. You don't have to mess around trying to find the actual bolt with your fingers and missing it all the time. So get that one on first. That didn't go on, thought it went on, didn't. He says it makes it easier. Let's put it on there. Like so. It normally works, so it's normally easier to do it that way. For some reason it's been a little awkward today. So that's the one, and then we put the bolt through the next one onto there like so, and then we do the same again. If we can pick the bolt up, the nut up, sorry, put the nut on the bottom. And then if we, now we can put the socket on, the spanner, and then finally get it done up. So get that done up, like so. One. And the other, get the spanner on, and then we get that done up, so it's nice and tight. Okay, right, so that's your sort of protector bar at the back of the axle, so it gives you some sort of protection. Right, I've had a little play, and if I turned over the instruction manual, it would have made it better and clearer. I was following instructions because you can have exactly the same setup as that, so you've got full-wheel steering as well. At the moment I just want to stick to two-wheel steering, so the front steering. So it required some slightly different bars, so I've had to follow the instructions and put these fixed bars in so that your axle is fixed solid. You can do the same as that, as I said, and you can take these off and use the bars the same as the other way around, and you can install another servo, but I don't want to go down that route at the moment. So next step is to start putting the arms together which hold this to the chassis. So we firstly take one of these steel tubes as per the manual, and then we've got some little screws which fix into there like so. You can see it fixes into there like so. Same the other end, and what we do, actually the easier way to do it, I was just thinking that because I don't know how far it's going to go into that arm, so I'll put it onto the head part first, because it actually gives you a length of what you need to do. So let's put that there for a second. I've actually got some Tamiya pliers as well, which are quite useful because they've got a plastic, so you can hold things without damaging the thread. So that's quite a good little investment to purchase if you're going to be doing lots of kits. Obviously if you're only going to be doing one or two, it's not worth the expense because they're not cheap. So let's get that onto the right length. Check it against the manual, and we can see That needs a little tiny bit more, and then that's one done. So that's the one. Do the same for the other end. This bit's going to be a bit time consuming, so what I'll do is I'll do a couple, go off camera, and I'll have to finish off doing them so I can come back and then we can start installing them on the chassis. So it doesn't bore you to death. It's not the best fun looking at someone just screwing things up like this. Just check that. A bit more yet. Hold that like that. And then we double check. Okay, so we're in a position now so we can put that onto one end of the bar, like so. Do that up tight. Manual says put thread lock on, but I don't really think you're going to need it. So it's easier to. I always find it easier to leave it so you can maintain things easier. If you put thread lock on, it can make a mess and it can make things difficult to put together once it's done. Right, so that's done. So you've got one bar, like so. So you need to make up another 8 of those, I think. Okay, managed to get all the rods done. We've got 6 long ones and 2 short ones. So as you can see from the close-up view, you've got a little ball joint in one of them, which screws to one part of the chassis, and then the other part goes onto the ball clips that we've already put on before. So that's all ready to go. So I thought we'd just have a quick look at the chassis. Now we've got the detailed view camera, so as you can see it's quite a nice, well constructed chassis, which is quite strong. Obviously you've got your aluminium rails along the side, which gives it lightness and strength, but it also gives it flexibility. You've got the plastic on the side, which I would have preferred it to be metal, to be fair, but okay, fair enough. I don't know if that's an upgrade you can get at some point. So yeah, it looks quite a nice chassis, so I look forward to getting this one finished. So we need to turn upside down the chassis, making sure we've got it round the right way, which is as shown. So what we need to do is we need to take one of the short bars to start with, and what we do with that is we place it on the side rail down on this part here, and it looks like it goes into the top screw, which is this fixing up here. So I'll get the screw ready, and that's got to go through the bar, obviously, through this chassis rail bar, and it goes straight through onto your fixing like so. And then obviously your bolt goes on to the back of that. But you need to put a small plastic part, which is a D part, which goes on the back, which gives you the distance between the bolt and the ball joint, so it doesn't sort of get in the way of it all or anything like that. It gives you the actual hole flexibility you're supposed to have. So we need to do that one up. Okay, so that's like so. So that's one part of your suspension, which is there. And you have to do that on all 4 corners, so you need to put another short one on this side, and then obviously the longer ones need to go at the top. Right guys, got the chassis done, the arms on there, so they're all fixed on as they should be, as you can see. So they're all ready to have the axles fixed. So they're quite sturdy arms actually, easy to make, and they're quite sturdy they appear, so we'll see how things go. So it's just a case of popping the holes over the ball joints on the axle. So we'll put the lower ones on first. So pop that one on first, and then we'll pop the second one on. No, get them out of the way. That one onto there, and then that one pops onto there. Go onto the top like so. Obviously the bottom ones go on the bottom brackets, the bottom balls. So that sits on side so. Pull that one back over. That goes on to that joint. That one back over, and that goes on to that joint. So there you have your totally flexible suspension, which I think is quite nice. So the next step is, so that's what you've got so far, guys. Quite an impressive looking machine. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get the suspension parts ready, and then we can crack on making the suspensions. Got a couple of little tips on them, hopefully they work still, but we'll see on the next stage. Right, we're now in a position to start doing the shocks. So I've made a start on doing this. These are awkward things. You've got some E-clip at the bottom of the black plastic, as you can see, and you put the black plastic on another E-clip, and that E-clip on the top is a nightmare. So I've done that off camera to avoid any swearing if possible. And I can guarantee you no E-clips were lost or harmed in the making of this video. Right, so what we need to do, I'll put one together beforehand, just to make sure my technique still works as it should do, and then I'll come back on and I'll go through one with you in a second. Okay? Right, I've put one together. Well, I've left it to drain for now so that any bubbles dissipate. So I've got a little handy little stand I bought a while ago, so I can now get to use that on the channel, obviously. And you can see it's got the oil in there. The way I tend to try and do it is to put, obviously you need to put the small rubber like grommet type things which sort of stop the fluid leaking out the shocks. You need to put 2 of those into the bottom of the shock housing itself. Then the best thing I find to do is to place the actual shaft into the spring so that it's just sitting proud outside, and then to fill the spring up rather than put the shaft into the actual shock housing and then fill it up. That's when you're likely to get more bubbles. So I find it better to do this by filling up the shock with the shaft out. It's not going to leak because you've got the bar through the grommets, so you've got enough protection to stop it leaking out the bottom. It's a case of filling up the shock to a certain level. Doesn't have to be full because you can top up like you would do when you're maintaining. So we'll fill it up to so far, like so, and then if you pop in the plunger into there, into the actual shock, you'll see that there's no bubbles actually inside. So, right, so while we're waiting for the shocks to settle for 15 to 20 minutes, we can crack on and start installing the springs on the chassis. Now the actual kit comes with normal sort of springs, which they're not too bad, but you can get a hop-up version, which is part number 54804. That's 54084 as seen, and they are barrel springs. Now they're supposed to give you a better all-round movement. So we'll put them on to see exactly how they go. They're all red coloured springs. I know that all the different colours have different meanings, but I'm not 100% sure on what the difference is. So it's basically, if you remember before, we had little sections which we installed onto the shocks, onto the axle and the chassis. These springs basically just slide into the actual housing like so, and also at the bottom into the housing like so. So you've got that sort of layout. Then you get two little brackets that go over the top of that, which actually tie them onto the chassis. As you can see, it goes on like so. So let's get a screw, because obviously they're not easy to hold in place when you're holding the spring and everything else at the same time. So them onto there, and then it's just a case of screwing them on until they're tight. That will then hold that spring in place, and it will stop it sort of falling out or anything else. So just double check that is the right size screw. It doesn't need anything else. No, that's right. Okay, so we put the screw in the other. That's because it's not held in at the moment, so it's going to do that. So we'll put the screw in this side first, second. That can be done up like so. And that one. You can see the difference in the springs. That's the barrel type spring. That's the standard type spring. So you've got more area of the spring to give you a better performance. So let's install that onto there. And then we need to do the same on this one. So we put a small screw into the mount section bracket, and then it's just a case of not a lot of room to manoeuvre with this, so it is quite fiddly, so hopefully you can see exactly what I'm doing. Let's do this side first. Get that into there. So the thing, magnetic screwdrivers are handy, but they're also a pain because they try and pull the screw out of the holder that you're putting it into. So it's swings and roundabouts really. Let's try and do this side first, which looks a bit more in the open. Like that. Let's get a hold of that particular screw, and then we can put the other one in and do them both up together then. Like so. Get in there. See what I mean by being fiddly? Right, I think we're now in there. Yeah. Right, so we do that screw up best that you can. You don't want to over tighten it because you'll strip the thread of the plastic, so it's a case of sort of knowing when to stop. Right, so that's one particular side. So you can see you've got a fair amount of travel, and it also gives you the flex that way as well. It's obviously what you need for crawling. So once the shocks are finished, they will be attached at these points, and that will obviously dampen out the springiness of the way the chassis is at present. So I'll carry on and do the other three, and by that time the shocks should be ready to close up and we can install them. Right, next I'll put all the springs on, as you can see. So they're all complete now. It's looking quite a monster actually, I think. It's very, very well put together. So, but you can see I've added the uprated barrel springs instead of the original ones, so we'll see what difference it makes, but they're supposed to have more flex in the way they move because obviously the thinner at the bottom and thicker in the middle. It gives them the flexibility as well that way as well as that way, so but we'll see. I've jumped on one step in the meantime, and I've put the small bars that actually help to tie the shocks and the chassis all together. So that's 4 of those made, so you've just got your eye at the end, and it's got a little rotted bar which has got an adjuster in it, so you can adjust things on the car. You don't have to take it off to do it. So it's not like the old days where you used to have to undo it and do the caps up a bit more or undo it a bit more. You can actually just adjust it like that by turning that, and it'll adjust the actual whole bar. So I've got all the 4 shocks, they're all now ready. So as you can see, they've got the caps on. There's now, I've got the little red dust caps. So we can now close those up. And that's each one of those now complete. Right, so we'll just stand it in there for now. Take that one out. And then we'll do that one up, nice and tight. So all the air should have released now, the time's been settling. So that should all hopefully be the same. So get these other 2 done up. That one, and then the last one. And then what we can do is we can get the bottom mounts put onto these, and then we can get them fixed to the chassis. So we'll have springs and shocks, so we'll virtually there on the chassis side of things. But then a case of installing the electronics, which I will probably do on the 4th video. Obviously the 4th video is mainly going to be painting, but it's going to have to dry between coats, so I can do 1 coat, come back, do some electrics, go back and do another coat, and so on until we get it complete. Obviously we've got to mask it up first, so we'll mask all that up on the screen to a certain extent, excuse the phone. So yeah, so we'll crack on with that, and we can get things tied up. So it's just a case of putting on some of these, which I noticed with these bars, one goes on one way around and one goes the other way. Obviously when you adjust it, you keep the same length, but you just adjust that actual rod distance, so you're moving that by the back and forth, which gives you a less or greater angle, but it doesn't adjust the length of those two clips or two fixings. Right, and the last shock. Bottom and fixing on. Hold the shaft with the special pliers. You can do it with a normal pair of long nose pliers or anything, but as long as you put something on like a tissue or something to stop it, if the spindle spins with the pliers, it scratches it, which will then make it difficult to go up and down inside the shock housing, and then you may get sort of grinding or it won't work correctly. Right, so they're all done. So now we can get the chassis. Let's move these parts out of the way because I need to put the chassis in front of me. Cut all the little plastic parts ready, so that can go out of the way for now. Put that over there. Bring the chassis over. And if we turn the chassis upside down, we can then start to fit the shocks. So put got a little tiny, like a sleeve, which goes through the top of the shock, which that gives you the diameter of the bolt, so that it doesn't move. Obviously like that, it's like so. So if I just push it forward, you can see, pull that in, and that goes like that. So then we need to make sure that goes onto there like that. Yeah, right. Oh, you know what, I forgot the little plastic bits, didn't I? These little plastic bits will push, they're like spacers, which pushes it away from the chassis. Otherwise, as you can see, it wouldn't actually go in properly, and you'll end up not getting a correct fit. Right guys, I've progressed on a little bit further, so as you can see, all the shocks are now fitted to the chassis. So it's looking quite a nice chassis. and it's got a nice smooth suspension as well. As you can see by the mechanism and the way it works, it's very well constructed, to be fair. So next stage is to start building the differential. So I'll get all the bits laid out on the bench and then I'll be back shortly. Alright, got the bits laid out on the bench. I've pre-done some of the bits because they're rather awkward. You've got, as you can see, you've got part of the differential here which has got a cross-threaded ball joint, and it's not easy to get in there. You have to squeeze it in one side, bend the plastic and squeeze it in the other side. So I've done them in advance so that we're ready to proceed. So I've now just got to cut out a couple of these sections which we need for the inside of the differential. Okay. And that one. Just to check, because we need to make sure this is smooth, because this is going to be going around obviously inside the differential. So it's just a case of if there's any slight little bits on there, just to file it off so that you can see it will run smoothly. Them cutters that I mentioned before are fairly good at this, but on a radius they do tend to leave a small amount of extra plastic, so it's always advisable just to give it a little bit of a sand or a file or something. Right, next stage is to start doing the main differential, which joins the two axles together and the drive chain. I've made a start, and basically what you need to do is you have a base plate and you put your 3 shafts on it, alternate holes on the disc, and that's how it fixes. Then you put you've got some small ball bearings and 3 gears, they go on, and then that gets screwed onto the top. So I'll just find the other bearings and then I can crack on. Right, so you basically get your cog and a bearing in each end, like so. Doesn't matter which way around the cog goes, they're both exactly the same each way. That goes onto there. Get your other cog, and then obviously your ball bearings in both ends, like so. And then that places onto the final shaft on the disc. Then we get top plate and the screws, and then basically we just close that section up, and that's obviously part of the first part of the differential unit. Okay, then the next one into that one, like so. It's nice and tight. The last screw, and put that into the last shaft, like so. Just make sure they're nice and tight. Okay, so that will spin along with the gears. As you can see, they spin independently, and that will go round as well, which gives you part of the differential unit. So turn over the page to page 14 now, and we now need to take this unit and install it into the housing. So we need this bar, one of the little bars that you have, like you have on the wheels, which gives you your drive. So it's one of those. So let's get some grease on the go for the gears. That they are. Right, what we do need on here are some large bearings, I believe. No, they're the next size. The ones we need are, no, just the one bearing that goes into there. So that goes onto that end, which fits on there nicely. So if we put some grease onto the gears, like so, then when we turn it around, once it's in the housing, it will spread and dissipate over the remaining gears and the housing itself. So that is like so, which you can see fitted into the housing. Okay. Next we need to take off this part of the differential housing. Right, so we need to take this section off the part spray. Just make sure there's no ledges on it that's going to have any effect on the fitting. So that then gets fitted onto the outside of the unit, and it goes like so. Turn around the right way, it might actually fit. Right, so that looks like that. And get that done up. So that one's tight. Then on the other side, we need a bolt with a lock nut. It looks like lock nut, yeah. So if I put that in, it's also got a little indentation for the nut to sit in. So it's just a case of getting the nut round the right way so that it actually sits in there, but you don't actually get a lot of room to fit it in. So that's in. So we can get our screw, and then we can get that done up. Like so. That's the two top bolts done. We then need to take off another part, which is A6, which is that one. It's cutting quite well, so we don't need to do anything. Then this is fitted to this drive system as such. So you've got an indent to match the shape of the actual housing. So that goes on like so, and then the bolts go through that. So that's obviously part of the fixing to the main unit. Right, so I've just made a note of something. I just looked at the diagram again, and actually all those 4 nuts at the back of this section are lock nuts. So I've had to take the first one we did out and put a lock nut in. So we're now ready to proceed with the next step. Go. Right, so that's in. And then what we need to do is take one of the drive shafts we made up, which is one of these sort, and we need a grub screw like we've used in the past on certain points of the build. If I can find one. There we go. It's a grub screw like so, which has got a small thread at the top and then a centre shaft. So what it does is you put that onto the actual mechanism like so. Pin through the bar into the middle, and that needs to be in enough, which it is. Okay, and we need to make sure we don't allow that bar to move out, because if we allow that bar to move, we're going to end up with the same problem. So what we then do is we put that on, making sure we get the thread the right way around. That's the threaded side, so it's got to go that way. So we put on that onto the shaft, and then we feed in the grub screw. Okay. Right. So that's in there like so. Feels a bit loose at the moment, but I assume it will tighten up once the rest of the housing's done. So that's basically what we've done. We've got the shaft on and we put the grub screw through the middle. That holds it on tight so it can't come out. So that's that section done. Now what we need to do is we need to put on this bottom plate, and that again needs the lock nuts at the back. So if I put in this first one, that goes, make sure it goes in the right way around, otherwise your thread will be in reverse and it won't work. Right, so that's like so. Hey, it's alive, alive. Right, so that's got to go that way around, I think. It's tricky because you've got to hold the nut in there and hold this at the same time as well. I just need to make sure it goes on the right way around, which is that way. And we take the longer bolt of the two, because obviously it's got to go through quite a lot of plastic, and then we can do that up like so. Like that. And you can see that actually fits nice and snug to the housing of the differential unit. So we can now take the final nut, which goes inside the housing, and out the right. It's got to come out. Got to come out. It's not in the right way around. I wonder if I can actually fit it like that. Never thought of that. And it works a treat until you put it back up. Tip for you: if you've got a little any sort of lock nut or nut to go into a fitting like such, place it onto a hex screw or a small screwdriver, push that into the main section that you need, and then it's just a case of pushing it into the actual the housing. But make sure you hold it, because if your screwdriver is magnetic, it will put it back out again. So, handy little tip for you. Right, so that's that part done. Okay, so there you go. We've got half the housing together as per the instructions, and we've put this on, which I assume is part of the fixing to the system at a later date. So we can now take the motor. I'm just going to stick with the standard 540 motor at the moment. I may put an uprated one in at some stage, but we'll see later on. So we need the pinion gear, which is there, and we need a little grub screw, which is there. If I can pick it up. Where did it go? Right, so I've got a little grub screw, and that can go onto the end of there. Best thing to do is put the grub screw into the pinion before you attempt to put it on shaft, but only put it in lightly, otherwise you're not going to get it in. So put on the it's like a gasket. I was trying to think what the word was. It's like a gasket between that and the housing of the differential, the motor housing. It sort of just acts as a bit of flexibility Right, so we need to make sure we put that on the right way. You'll notice on the motor that there's a flat spot. The flat spot is where the pinion gear goes, like so. Right, I've managed to establish what the problem was. This large cog has a section where the bearing goes on, but it's really tight. You need to push it in really hard. So I pushed it in now, and that is now okay. So it's a case of fitting these to the housing, which is using some of the good old silver bolts. So we put those through that section, and that is it a lock nut? Indeed it is a lock nut. So that goes into the housing like so, and put the bolt. Hi guys, unfortunately the GoPro's decided to run out of battery now, so I'm going to have to finish off the next bits tomorrow. But what I'll do is I'll show you what I've managed to do. It's taken me some time because it's been a bit of a pain, to be honest, but it was all because of some stupid mistake that I made, so it's easily done. I'll just flick the camera around so you can see. So I've managed to get this part together. The silver plate which I put the motor onto earlier on, unfortunately was around the wrong way, so it wouldn't fit properly and it was making the gears not turn. So I've been agonisingly sitting here trying to work out what was wrong, and it was staring me in the face all along. So it's done now. So for the next time, the next video will be part 4. We've just got to fit that to the mounting plate at the bottom, and also we've got to start doing the body. So it's a case of fitting that, fitting the electrics, and then we can start doing the body. May have to run into 5 parts. I was hoping to do it in 4, but GoPro batteries don't last very long, and I haven't got a laptop over at the moment to be able to connect it up to. So until next time, happy RCing, and see you soon. Have fun.